Welcome everyone, this is That One Loster, and today we're going to be looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game. We'll be looking over multiple things in this guide. Let's get started. So at the beginning of every battle, we start with a draw phase. Now, player 1 does not get a draw phase, but player 2 does. Then we go into our standby phase. Standby phase is where you basically have some effects activate. Right now we're looking at main phase. During main phase, you can set or summon monsters, play any spell or trap cards by setting them or placing them on the field. During the main phase, you can also activate effects just like standby phase or the draw phase, or even in our next phase called the battle phase. But right now here in the main phase 1, we are activating effects to have cards come to the hand as shown in this process. Now we're going to move on to the battle phase, and the battle phase is basically where you attack other monsters or defend your monsters, and how you basically lose life points or gain life points. This is the main core concept of how you win a game. Finally, we're going to go into the main phase 2. Not finally, but close to finally. This is where you get to add more monsters or set more trap cards after the battle phase. And after that, we'll get to our last phase, which is the end phase. After the end phase, that's where all card effects are done and resolve, and the second player turn starts. And that's how turns switch off. Now we see the Yu-Gi-Oh! Playmat. Now we're going to talk about the first center cards, which are the 5 brown top cards. That is the monster field. This is where you get to place all your monsters or set them. Set means you place face down sideways. Summon, you go place up and down vertically. Then you get the two lightish blue cards are the link summon zones. Those are part of the extra deck. We'll get into link summoning a little later in the video, but for right now, that's what they are. On the right-hand side, you have a graveyard and deck zone. This is where your deck goes and where all your destroyed monsters and discarded cards go to. Next to the graveyard is the banishment zone and a pendulum zone, but we'll get into pendulums later. On the left-hand side, we have the field card zones and the extra deck zones. This consists of your extra deck monsters such as your link summons, your fusion summons, your XYZ summons or exceeds, and your synchros. And then right below the monster card zone are the spell and trap card zones. The spell and trap card zones are the lightish blue squares that you see. Next to the lightish blue squares, you'll see 2 squares with a blue diamond and a red diamond. Those are a pendulum zones, and usually before a specific time, before the previous format, Konami had these in their separate zones, but now they're combined in the spell and trap card zone. Moving on, we're now looking at a standard Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck that consists of 40 cards. I am using Master Duel to show you these cards. A standard deck consists of 20 monsters, 10 spells, and 10 traps. That would be a balanced deck with 15 extra monsters in their extra monster deck. That the extra monsters are in a separate deck. Another deck that is in their separate deck is a side deck, which allows you to swap cards out during games if you need to exchange any cards. A good balanced deck would have 10 low-level monsters and about 6 to 8 high-level monsters. This is usually a deck that's based around that, so I usually use 5 to 8 if it really consists of that. Usually 6 is the magic number between high-level monsters and low-level monsters. So, the trap cards are the pinkish ones that you see me scrolling up and down. Those are trap cards. Those are played during your opponent's turn or the turn after you play them. Spell cards can be played at any time depending on as long as the icon persisted allows it. So we'll go into those situations as time comes. So when making a 40 card deck, you're going to use multiple cards such as your monsters. Starting from the top left, you see a normal monster. A normal monster is not going to have any effects. They're just going to have their attack, the defense, the level, the name, and the attribute of the monster. Next to that is an effect monster. An effect monster, when summoned on the field face up, will activate its effect depending on its ability. The next type of monster is a spirit monster. Spirit monsters are like effect monsters, but don't stay on the field for too long. The monsters after spirit monsters are going to be ritual monsters. Ritual monsters can be normal type monsters or effect type monsters that are summoned using a specific card and amount of monsters matching the level of that card. We'll go over more about ritual monsters later in the video. But for right now, this is another type of card that's going to be in your decks. After ritual monsters, you'll see Gemini monsters. These are special effect monsters that can become specific monsters when certain moments or qualifications are met. Monsters after Gemini will be the tuner monsters. Combining two other monsters or a single other monster becomes a synchro monster. But to make a synchro monster, which we'll get into later, you need a tuner. The tuner helps other monsters become synchro monsters. Tuners will usually be low-level monsters that will be easy to summon out to help bring out your synchro monsters. After that, you'll see the tunes. The tunes are retrained creatures using the spell card Toon World. These monsters can attack directly and will have other effects as well, but usually to bring them out, you're going to need Toon World or Toon Kingdom. The last type of monster we're going to cover that can be in a 40-card deck of that 20 are pendulum monsters. We'll go over the effects of pendulum monsters a little bit later, but these are types of monsters that have the abilities of an effect or normal monster, as well as the effect of a spell card. Pendulum monsters can be in the monster card zone, the extra card zone, and the spell and trap card zone, depending on the situation that is called for. The next type of cards are spell and trap cards. There are, starting from the top left, ritual cards, field cards, quick play cards, continuous cards, equipment cards, normal spell and trap cards, counter cards, and continuous trap cards. So let's again start from the top left. A ritual card is a card used to summon ritual monsters. To use a ritual monster card, you'll need the ritual monster and the ritual spell card, as well as the total number of ritual sacrifices to be used. We'll get into this a little bit more when ritual summoning comes up. The next type of spell card will be field spell cards. Field spell cards can be placed in their own designated section, such as the field spell card field. This spell card affects the whole field of the specific player, giving them special abilities, effects, and power-ups that works conjunction with their decks and other cards. Originally, in the previous format, a field spell card would cover the whole field. In recent years, they make it to only where it covers one of the players who activates the spell cards. As another effect of the previous format, if another player played another spell card, the previous spell card would have been removed. Again, due to the conjuncture of the new format systems, this ruling was removed, now allowing both players to have two spell cards on the fields at the same time, which gives them a fair advantage on evil level footing. The next available spell card we're going to talk about is Quick Play spells. Quick Play spells can be activated much like traps during your opponent's turns, main phase, draw phase, standby phases, main phase 1, or main phase 2. Though some Quick Play spell cards must have met a requirement to be activated. Some Quick Play spells can be done during your turn. Quick Play spells act like traps to count against other things and can be used in conjunction to other effects. The next kind of spell cards we'll be looking at is continuous spell cards. Once a player plays these cards on the field, their effects are most essentially permanent. Unless another player removes these cards by banishing it or sending it to the graveyard, current continuous spell cards will remain on the field for the rest of the game. When a player removes these current spell cards or continuous spell cards from either player's field, those effects will be no longer applied to any of the monsters or either players. All effects will be removed and taken away. Lastly, the last spell card we'll be looking at is equipment spell cards. Equipment spell cards are spell cards that attach to monsters. They can either give more extra effects, such as battle damage and effect damage, or increase attack points or defense points. They can also be attached to either player's monsters. Some equipment cards are best used if they're going to reduce a player's monster's attack points to be placed on an opponent's monsters. Not a lot of decks currently use a lot of equipment cards. There are some current decks in the format that still use them, but they are far in between. I've mentioned normal traps and spell traps before, normal traps and normal spell cards, but as a representative, I'm just showing normal trap cards because there are more unique spell cards than there are trap cards. So I'm going to talk about both of them at the same time. First, let's talk about spell cards. A normal spell cards can only be activated during your turn, and it can be placed face up, while a normal trap must be first set on your turn during the main phase or main phase 2. This is when you can set or play any spells or traps. This also applies with continuous spells, equipment spells, field spells, and ritual spells, but as well as continuous trap cards. But again, you must set a trap card before playing or activating it. You cannot activate a trap card from the hand, while a spell card you can. Next, let's talk about counter traps. Counter traps are trap cards that are designated to act as a counter due to specific actions, such as a quick play spell, or even a ritual or continuous spell, or even a field card spell, or an effect monster. If an effect monster effect is affecting you, you can activate a specific counterattack trap card. These cards are good to do in a very clinch situation, and they make a very excellent play. Last type of trap card we're going to talk about is a continuous trap card. Much like a continuous spell cards, these cards are on the field once the player activates it. Other players can destroy it, and once they leave, their effects are gone. Trap cards, continuous trap cards, and continuous spell cards will remain as long as they stay on the field. Now, since I mentioned these two types of cards, there is a thing called linking. When you activate a monster's effect, then a player activates a spell card effect, and after that a trap card, that is called a link. What happens then in this situation is the last card gets activated, followed by the second to last, and then the first. So if a player activates a monster's effect to destroy a spell card, then another player counters with another trap or spell to counter that, and then finally the original player plays a spell card or a trap card to counter that card. Then the original caster of the very first monster effect card activates the previous card that was just recently activated. Then the next activation of the previous card is activated or negated. And finally, if any of these cards that activated after the first card affect the first card, then that card is negated or destroyed. I hope you guys enjoy this part of explaining of the spells and trap cards. There are many other instances where these cards do come into play and have many different effects. If you want to see more things, I will be making more videos and more guides about them. But for now, this is just a quick rundown of how you should use these cards. In all trading card decks, there are usually an accumulated of 10 spells and 10 traps. Some decks that use spellcasters use more spell cards and less traps. But this depends on what type of deck those are. Now let's get into the last type of cards. Moving over from the mainline deck, we have the extra deck. Starting from the top left, we have fusion cards. Much like ritual cards, these cards require 2 monsters or more, the specific spell card named Polymerization, or any other cards that can be used to be fusioned. Unlike the other cards that once they are made or summoned, such as the synchros to the top right, the exceed monsters to the bottom left, and the link monsters on the bottom right, a fusion monster can be undone and be separated into the 2 separate cards it was used. This is done by defusing, using the card Defusion. Fusion monsters rely on cards such as the card Polymerization, like I said before, or the other card Defusion. There are other cards such as Power Bond that works with machine type monsters, and there are other cards that work with subclass monsters, such as the Red Eyes, the Blue Eyes, Odd Eyes, Elemental Heroes, Destiny Heroes, Evil Heroes, as well as many others such as the Predaplants and many other subclasses. Now let's move on to the next cards off to the right side. Synchro monsters are the white extra deck monsters that you see on the right hand side and have a level. To summon a synchro monster, you will need the amount of cards that equal the level, plus a card called a tuner monster. We saw tuner monsters in our previous section of the video explaining the types of monsters and decks. Tuner monsters are usually low-level monsters as stated before, from 1 to usually 4. There are some rare cases where they're usually 5 or 6, but that is in very low cases. Also, synchro monsters can also be tuners as well. Tuner synchro monsters can be used to help summon out higher level monsters like level 12s, level 11s, and level 10s. Sometimes it's harder in specific decks to bring out those higher level monsters. Usually, most synchro monsters are level 5, 6, 7, and 8, and require only 2 monsters. Levels 10 through 12 usually require multiple monsters and at least 1 or 2 tuners. Moving towards the bottom left of the screen, you can see cards in black, covered in black, around the monsters. These are exceed monsters. Like fusion monsters, they usually require 2 monsters. But unlike synchros, which require a tuner monster, or fusion monsters that require 2 monsters and a spell card, these cards just need 2 monsters. But very similar to synchro monsters, they need to meet a specific level. The level they need to meet are the same levels. So if you're trying to summon out a low-level monster, such as level 1, you can actually exceed summon to a level 1 exceeds monster. Exceed monsters go from 1 to 12 and usually require only 2. There are some cases where you're going to need more sacrifices for these summons, but again, those are usually level 8s, 9s, 10, 11, and 12s. Once an exceed monster is summoned, it loses the ability of level and gains a new ability called rank. You cannot use a rank monster, such as an exceed monster, over another one. When you're summoning an exceed monster, you'll usually take 2 levels monsters that are the same ones, place them on top of each other, and then place the exceed monster over. There are some spell cards that help exceed monsters gain more power or move up in ranks, such as a rank 4 becoming a rank 5. But we'll go into these situations a little bit later. As we move into the last summoning mechanic that was recently introduced in the last couple of years, we'll go into link monsters. As I stated in the other part of this video, we'll cover each summoning a little bit differently, but we'll do a short breakdown of the link summons. With their blue cards, they lose levels and they lose defense points. They do get to keep their attack points, and they can be destroyed, but with the loss of defense points and other things, they gain 8 arrows that point in multiple directions. Whenever these 8 arrows point at a different monster, they give them a special effect that's dictated on their cards. Link monsters are summoned by using their specific summoning mechanic by removing up to how many monsters or what type of monsters are on the field. With that, that's how you summon all these extra deck monsters. Using dark magic, let's get into ritual summoning these new monsters and go into a deeper dive. Ritual monsters usually require a spell card, the desired ritual monster in hand or deck, and the acquired levels or greater to summon them. Once you use the spell card, you can ritual summon the card and bring out their effects. Multiple unique kind of spell cards can either be used for ritual and fusion summoning if it depends on what kind of deck you're using. While using the spell card and making sure that they meet requirements, spell cards can bring out specific monsters, which are your rituals, as long as they are equal or greater to the ritual monster. And that's how you summon a ritual monster. I hope this part of the video does help you out, and then while you're watching this example, you can see how it's done. Now let's move on to the next summoning mechanic. Combining 2 monsters with a spell card. Let's get fusing. A new monster will be born from these 2 souls. Fusion monsters are used by using a spell card, just like ritual monsters. But unlike ritual monsters, the levels are not required, just whatever monster is stated on the monster text of the fusion monster. You also need to use cards, as stated before, called polymerization or any other card. In this example, you see me using a card called Power Bond. This is a specific machine type fusion card that you can use on any machine type monster, doubling its attack points when it's summoned. But after these fusion monsters is summoned and removed from the field, you gain damage dealt to you due to how much the original attack is. So with Cyber Red Dragon, if I lost this battle, I would have lost 4,000 life points. But since I didn't, and I ended at the end of the turn, this card did massive damage. Let's get moving on to synchro summoning. Speeding on through in the world of 5D, synchro summoning is here to make a splash onto the scene. Let's tune those levels and create a whole new monster. Synchro summoning time. Synchro monsters during the season of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds was a new kind of mechanic that we didn't see before. With the last 2 mechanics we saw both in Yu-Gi-Oh! The original Yu-Gi-Oh! Series and Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, synchro summoning was a whole new mechanic brought to the game, using 2 monsters, levels, and making a new monster. This requires either one regular monster with a specific level, and a tuner monster that requires a lower level monster. In this case scenario, we're going to use 2 effect monsters to summon out our synchro. When synchro summoning, you usually need to just use those two specific monsters. So in this case, our spell card allows us to summon twice. Our tuner, and then our regular monster that we're going to tune. Tuner monsters help you add up to the synchro monsters levels you need to make to summon them. A synchro monster must be summoned with a tuner monster and a non-tuner monster that equal its level. Sometimes they require specific monsters from specific decks, but in this case scenario, our synchro monster just needs to equal the level 5. So let's tune these monsters and make our synchro. Junk Warrior. Alright, and that's how you synchro summon. Let's get into a battle and get rid of this opponent. Junk Warrior, attack. Alright, with that being said, let's move over to Exceed monsters. Filling the overlay network, we're going to make a whole new monster, taking 2 level 4s or 2 level 5s, 2 level 6s, 2 level 7s, 2 level 8s, or 2 level 10s. It's time to fill that overlay network and create a whole new creature. Let's get to Exceed Summoning. After our time in the world of 5Ds, we got a whole new summoning mechanic called Exceed Summoning, thanks to the show Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. With Exceed Summoning, unlike Synchro monsters, which require you adding up to the monsters, you just need to play 2 monsters with the same levels, like I said before. This can be from 1 to 12. So as you see here, we're going to place 2 monsters on the field. When we have 2 monsters the same levels, we can Exceed Summon and fill the overlay network. We're going to bring out number 39, not 25, but 39, Utopia. Let's fill in the overlay network and Exceed Summon. Now, since we have Utopia, it's no longer a level 4 like the previous 2 monsters, but a rank 4. Let's attack and get rid of our opponents. Alright, let's go into our next adventure with Pendulum Summoning. It's time to set the pendulum scale. Let the pendulum swing back and forth to summon out our ultimate monsters from our deck, hands, and extra deck. Pendulum summoning is very much like ritual summoning, as it being a special type of summoning from the deck. But, as stated in the spell and trap card segment, the pendulum summon zones are in the spell and trap card zones. These zones can be from 1 to even 10 or even 12 sometimes, but the most cases is 1 to 8. When you place down a 1 to 8 pendulum scale, you can summon any monsters from level 1 to level 8. Here's a good example as we see. In this example, we are learning how to pendulum summon 2 through 7. As you see, we're going to play one pendulum in one of our spell cards and the other in our another one. Since now we have 2 pendulum zone monsters in the spell cards, we can now pendulum summon any cards up to the amount that is allowed for the pendulum summoning. So it could be anything from 2 to 7. Alright, we're going to bring out some monsters in attack mode and get ready to finish the fight. If a pendulum monster is destroyed, it goes directly back to the extra deck, but face up. And you can still summon it after it's destroyed by re-pendulum summoning. You cannot pendulum summon anything from the graveyard. Now let's gather the code and make the newest format, Link Summoning, happening. Alright, since this is the most recent type of summoning mechanic, we're going to go over it pretty simply. Link summons are very similar to all the other forms of monsters, but there is a bit of a catch. Unlike Exceeds, unlike Synchros, Link summonings lose their levels, lose their defense points, and only keep their attack points. They also just keep some other things such as the arrows. So let's try Link summoning now. Alright. First we're going to summon Link Slayer. And then we're going to summon Backup Secretary. We're going to try Link summoning Honeybot. As you see, we have now successfully Link summoned. When we summon a monster, we can even Link summon with other monsters to make a Link 3. Unlike other extra cards like
exceed monsters where you couldn't stack each other on top of each other, link monsters can be combined with others. So now we're going to use Deco Talker to finish the match. Alright, Deco Talker, attack our opponent and end this duel. And that's the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope you enjoyed this small tutorial. If you will want to play get any more tips, tricks, or useful, helpful things, check out Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel is a great game you can get on Switch, iOS, Steam, PlayStation, Xbox, and many other consoles. You can also check out Duel Links, which is also on iOS and Steam. I hope this helps, and I hope you enjoy this video. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.
Hey guys, so if you guys like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check out all the other social media stuff I have on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Alright guys, I will check you out later. Bye!